welcome to another installment. Today we're going to discuss the urinary system. So first, let's make sure we understand this key term, excretion. This is a key term, make sure you know this. Excretion is the process of removing waste products from the body. Without removing them, these would cause harm. So it's important we get rid of them. Okay, so keep that in your mind because we're going to talk about this a little bit further. So go ahead, remind me, what are the 11 systems of the human body? Hopefully you all came up with the right answer of run, Mr. Slice. Respiratory, urinary, nervous, muscular, reproductive, skeletal, lymphatic, integumentary, cardiovascular, endocrine, and digestive. Of these, which 5 do you think are part of the excretory system? Now please realize that there is no excretory system, but rather there are 5 different systems that make up this one term. Okay, so which 5 do you think they are? So the first one obviously is going to be the urinary system, because that's the one that we're going to be talking about today. So what is it that it's going to excrete? Well, it's going to excrete urine, right? And this is going to be things like nitrogenous based waste, the big thing that we're going to talk about, water, extra water, and extra electrolytes. So making sure that our balance of everything in our body is very important. Little chemistry units are our kidneys, and making sure that our internal chemistries are regulated to the right levels. Really important. The second, it's going to be the digestive system, and it's going to get rid of feces, poop, right? And this is going to be undigested food. It's going to be bacteria and dead cells. So that's what basically poop is made of. The third, our respiratory system. It's our exhale, and that's going to contain our waste products from cellular respiration of carbon dioxide, water, feel it in your hand, remember, sneezes, waste products, and coughing, making sure we don't have any of that external come into our internal being. The fourth one is coming up. It's the integumentary system. So not everybody realizes and thinks about this one, but the integumentary system is going to excrete and get rid of waste. And this one is going to be your sweat, okay? Your sweat is going to release not only temperature, right? Remember, if this doesn't get rid of, it is going to cause harm to the body. So if we don't get rid of our temperature, we're going to denature our proteins and then cause a havoc within our body. So we have to get rid of this extra temperature. It also gets rid of toxins and salts. It's going to get rid of some water, sweat, right? So really, really important. Okay, question. We talked about 4 so far: the respiratory, the urinary, the integumentary, and the digestive system. There's one more. It's the reproductive. Now here's the question for you. Do you think it is male? Do you think it is female? Or do you think it is both male and female? Well, the answer is it's just female only. Okay, so remember the definition of excretion. This is a waste product that without it being removed will cause harm to the body. So in the male reproductive system, yes, it can release a product, aka sperm, but it is not going to cause the body any harm if it stays in the body. It is not a waste product that has to be removed. Unlike the female system, when we talk about menses, which is the technical term for having a period, this is going to get rid of our unfertilized eggs and the lining of the endometrium. So the lining of the uterus that grows and thickens ready for a baby, and then when there is no baby, we have to get rid of it in order to grow a healthy new lining each month. So although the male does have a waste product, or it can be a product that can be wasted, it is not excreted for the purposes of excretory system definition. Okay. All right, question. What is the main thing that the urinary system excretes? Well, hopefully you said nitrogenous-based waste because it comes with the nitrogen. I wonder if you recognize what that is. It's a protein. Okay, so protein, remember we talked about our 4 macromolecules. Carbohydrates and lipids only contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but it was that protein that contains the extra nitrogen. And we also get protein from the food that we ingest. So if we eat anything that has protein in it, like meat, fish, eggs, these digested amino acids cannot, broken down, right, protein cannot be stored, so they've got to be excreted. But also the proteins that are used up in our body, because remember, proteins do everything. Well, sometimes they get worn out, right? Cells get worn out. These are going to release nitrogen, and they have to be released from the body, otherwise it's going to cause a big problem. Let's talk about the 5 top functions of the kidneys. The first one is it's going to filter, right? So it's going to filter approximately 150 quarts of blood each day to create about 1 to 2 quarts of urine. That's quite a bit. 1.2 to 1.3 liters per minute in your kidneys of blood. That's about 20 to 25% of your total blood volume are in your kidneys. That's an enormous amount of blood, but realize that of that total amount, only a very small amount is actually filtered to create this urine. So although there is an enormous blood supply, not all of the blood is going to be sorted out. It's going to take its turn, okay? Look at this image here. This is a dissected kidney. And what you might first go is like, well, that looks solid. That's all the blood vessels inside a kidney. Huge amount of blood vessels. So you can see why 20 to 25% of your entire blood is inside your kidneys at any one time, because there's a huge blood supply there. Okay, so the 5 top things that our kidneys are used for. Number 1, filtering out our waste products. The second one is to get our balance correct. As I said, they're little chemistry machines. They are going to make sure that our water balance and our electrolytes, these are all of the extra salts like sodium and potassium and calcium, that these are all regulated to the right amount. So for example, if you had a drink of orange juice, in that glass of orange juice, it actually contains more potassium than you need for your entire day. So all of the amount of potassium that your body does need, it will keep. And then the rest, your kidneys are going to get rid of. Now, this water is essential for us. You can see all of the importances that it has in this little diagram. Super, super, super important. From keeping your skin supple and your eyes all inflated, to allowing for digestion to occur, your blood to transport, all of the chemical reactions in your body. Water is essential. So we need to make sure that we have the right amount. Too much of it is going to be a problem. Too little of it is a problem. So your kidneys are going to work super hard to regulate to make sure it maintains the right level. Ooh, do you remember what that is? Homeostasis. I do hope so. Homeostasis, regulating everything to the right level. Not just water, but everything in our body. Okay. One of the things also that your kidneys is going to do, number 3, is going to regulate your blood pressure. So they produce hormones that are going to be vasodilators. That means that it's going to open up a blood vessel, and vasoconstrictors, which means it is going to make the blood vessels narrower. This allows for a constant flow of blood to go into your kidneys to be sorted appropriately, because you don't want all of a sudden to have just this trickle that you sort and then a big waterfall coming through. That's not going to be helpful, right? You wouldn't be able to sort through what you need to sort through. So it needs to have this consistency, and that's where these hormones regulate, and they do it by vasodilating, opening up and making the blood vessel bigger, which will decrease your blood pressure. Vasoconstricting, which means that you got a smaller opening, more pressure, and it increases your blood pressure. Okay, cool. So it regulates your blood pressure as a result. A fourth thing that your kidneys are going to do is they actually help to produce your red blood cells, which are going to carry the oxygen molecule around your body to keep you nice and oxygenated, right, for cellular respiration. Okay, so what it does is it secretes a hormone, and this stimulates your bone marrow into making the red blood cells. So it doesn't actually make it directly, but indirectly it influences how many red blood cells are going to be created. And the fifth most important thing that your kidneys do, obviously you do a lot more than this, but your kidneys are going to also help to activate your vitamin D. Now, although the vitamin D that comes in, a lot of it comes from the sunshine, we also can get it from the food we eat. It's not actually readily available for us to utilize. So with the help of both our liver and our kidneys, it converts it into a form that is usable by our body so that it can be used for bone health, for absorbing the calcium, and it helps to improve our immunity. So very important stuff. Cool question for you. What term is used to mean to open up your blood vessels? It helps with regulating blood pressure. So let's talk about the anatomy of the urinary system. So you have got 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, 1 urethra. Okay, I remember the ureters being 2 of them because in the word ureter there are 2 E's and urethra only has 1 E. That's how my brain does it. Okay, so if you need a kinesthetic device, you're going to do 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, 1 urethra. Okay, so that's the setup of our urinary system, the main key players that we have here. So a word about the urethra. A male's urethra is longer than a female's, 8 to 9 inches versus only 1.5 inches, much smaller. And the reason is that a man has a penis through which the urethra travels, so it's significantly longer, and the female's is very short and basically right against the female body, the vulva, right? The second thing that's different between a man and a woman's urethra is that the male's urethra does double duty for both ejaculating and carrying sperm and semen, as well as urine, whereas the female's is just totally and utterly only urine. That's it. There is no part of the reproductive system within the female urinary system, unlike the male's. Now, I want you to stand up right now, and I want you to see if you can figure out where are your kidneys. Well, if you put your hands on your back, you're in the right place. On the front, not so much. These kidneys are situated right on your back. So if you put your hand on either side of your spinal cord, just underneath or at the base of your ribs, that's where they are. We say that they are retroperitoneal. Now, this is one of my favorite words, so make sure that you know this word. Retroperitoneal means that it is behind other organs in the peritoneal cavity. So this is going to be within the peritoneum, that's the membrane of the abdominal pelvic cavity. They sit behind another organ. So that's where your kidneys are. Now, please make a note that they sit just under the base of your ribs and that the right kidney is slightly lower than your left. I wonder if you can figure out why. Well, I'm going to tell you. On the right-hand side, you have a massive organ called your liver, and that pushes down that right kidney just a little bit than your left because, well, it gets squished down a bit because the liver takes up so much space. Okay, you have 2 kidneys. You have 2 kidneys because evolutionarily, as they evolved, it was found that 2 was more advantageous because if one failed, you have a safety net, you've got a backup just in case. It also increased the capacity in filtering your blood, and we're also kind of bilateral symmetry, so divided down the middle we have 2. Again, 2 is better. But there are some people that have 3. Yes, some people can be born with 3, but if you get one transplanted, they leave the other 2 in unless they've gone really manky and bad, and then they remove them. But they like to just add another, and they don't add it in the back. They add it in the pelvic region, so it's closer to the bladder. Pretty cool, right? Now, On top of the kidney is a little party hat. This is the adrenal gland, and the adrenal gland serves a lot of function in producing hormones. And you can see in this image what it all is involved in. Big thing though, it produces adrenaline, right? This adrenaline is going to be your fight or flight hormone, and it can help with all sorts of things in your body and redirecting blood flow, increase heart rate, so on and so forth. Okay, so adrenal gland sits on top of your kidney, produces hormones, really quite important. And it's part of, the which system? The endocrine. Yeah, I knew you knew it. Good job. Okay, a little bit more about the anatomy here. So, the kidney itself is wrapped in a membrane, and this membrane is really quite thick, and this is the renal capsule, okay? Do you see that there is an indenting region right here? This indented region, this is the hilus. Some might call it a hilum, but I call it the hilus, one and the same. This hilus is the indented region, and going into it is going to be the renal artery. Now that renal artery is going to come off of the descending aorta. So that means it is coming straight from the heart. High pressure, high oxygen. Okay, once the blood has gone through the entirety of all of the blood inside and all of the workings within inside the kidney, it is going to come out through the renal vein. And that renal vein is going to attach to the inferior vena cava or vena cava, right? It is going to take the blood back to the heart and reprocess it through again through the right hand side. Another part that is coming off of this hilus region is going to be this ureter, right? The ureter is going to travel between the connection between the kidney and the bladder and transfer the urine from the kidney to the bladder. Okay, so lay of the land's very important here. So that's the outside of the kidney. But we need to basically find out, well, how does the kidney actually work? How does it do its job? Well, the kidney itself is like a warehouse. It holds all of the bits that do the job of filtering the blood and to make the urine. And that bit that does the actual work, that is called a nephron. And these are the functional units. Okay, so you'll hear me use these interchangeably, a functional unit and a nephron. They're the bit that take the blood, sort what do we want to keep, what do we want to get rid of, and that's the job. Okay, so that kidney is just to house, that's the structure to house the nephrons, of which there are about 1 million or more in each kidney. That's an enormous amount of these. So therefore, they're really, really teeny tiny. They're microscopic. And they look kind of like this curly-whirly structure you can see pulled out of the kidney. And they sit on the outside, and then they go inside, come back out, go back in. And this structure and location is going to be very important for us to make sure we understand. So the actual doing is done by the nephron, and the kidney houses it. Keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in your mind are these prefixes of words. So if you see neph or rena, this is to do with the kidneys, right? Cyst refers to the bladder. Okay, so neph and rena are to do with the kidneys, and cyst is to do with the bladder. So which doctor was it? Oh yeah, you knew. It was the urologist. Now the urologist, remember, is going to deal with more of the general working of the urinary system. So the urethra, the ureters, the kidneys, a little bit with the nephrons and the bladder, and it basically works the whole system and making sure it's functioning. But if you have a problem with the inner workings of your kidney, you would see a nephrologist, because they would be more in tune with the inner workings of your nephron, that functional unit that is going to do all of the job and the working inside the kidney and the sorting. Cool. Question. What prefix refers to the bladder? All right, so the nephrons. what is their job? Their job is to sort. What do I want? What do I want to get rid of? What is extra? What don't I need? I want you to think of it almost like sorting out the refrigerator. Hopefully you've done this before, whereby you take everything out and you're like, this salad dressing expired 2 years ago. Let's empty it and recycle the bottle. Oh, this apple is smushy. Let's recycle it as compost. This is just disgusting waste. We're going to throw it away. But this is really good food. I'm going to put it back into the fridge. Okay, this is good salad dressing. It hasn't expired. I'm going to put it back in the fridge. After, obviously, you clean out your fridge. But the fridge itself is the warehouse, which is like the housing. And the sorting process is the nephron. So the housing, the fridge is the kidney. And the sorting process, that's the nephron. Okay. I like to tell a story about my friend, Mr. Budd. He had an orchard in the UK, where I'm from, and from Kent, and he used to grow apples. And to pick the apples, he would have to go and hire people in, and they would pick the apples, and it would be a slow process. And then they'd have to sort the apples, right? Well, he kind of invented this machine, which was really, really cool, whereby he was able to collect all of these apples, put them into a tractor trailer, because he was able to pick all these apples for shaking them, right? Put them into a tractor, and then dump them into a great big warehouse, where they would then go through a sorting process. So you can see here where they would roll down this conveyor belt, and any of the dirt, the twigs, the leaves, all of that sort of stuff would fall through the cracks. Any of the teeny tiny apples that weren't ready, they would fall through the cracks at that point. And then they would go into the water bath, where they would wash off any of the dirt and debris. And then it would go through the next sorting process. This is not his machine. I just found this cool gift that I can include. And it would go and sort the apples based upon their texture, their size, making sure that they were good and healthy. And any that weren't, boop, 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 they would be picked off. And finally, they would be put into these boxes and shipped away. Okay. In my analogy here, my apple sorting is the nephron. And this enormous warehouse, imagine in this warehouse you have 1,000,000 of these sorting machines as far as the eye can see. Well, that warehouse itself is the kidney. Okay, I'm hoping you're understanding here. So the whole process is this kidney is the warehouse. It allows for stuff to come in. It gets sorted. The stuff that we want to keep is all the good apples, right? And that's going to go back. All the stuff that we don't want to keep, the waste, the twigs, the leaves, the dirt, the debris, that is going to get sent off back to the compost heap and then put back into the farm, or, urine. It's going to be excreted from the warehouse, excreted from our kidney. Have you ever noticed that a kidney is looking like a kidney bean? Well, they're actually really good for your kidneys. Different food sources kind of look like different things that we have. So, have you ever seen a walnut? It looks wrinkly and it's made up of 2 halves, like our brain. Whoa. Carrots, why are they good for your eyes? Because they contain the good vitamins that are needed for eyes. And if you look at it, it looks kind of like an eyeball. Isn't that kind of clever? Anyway, I just think it's interesting. So here we have the internal structure of a kidney. So if I were to take a kidney and cut it in half and open it up and look on the inside of it, I would be able to see structures that would look like this drawing that we're going to look at now. So the outer portion of it, this is called the renal cortex. Cortex being outer, like the cerebral cortex of our brain. And then in the middle, we have the renal medulla, and that means middle, okay? So in the middle, there are these renal pyramids. This is a renal pyramid, and this is a particular structure that's going to be very important later on. There are about 12 renal pyramids in a human kidney. So what we can see on this is that there is a distinct region that is outer versus the middle, and then right in the middle we have the renal pelvis, which is going to take in the urine and filter it into the ureter to take it down to the bladder. Now, the next part is looking at these nephrons. So remember that the nephron is the functional unit. And the important part is to see where it starts. It starts in the cortex, it dips down into the medulla, goes back up to the cortex and back down again. Now, what are all of these dots? You may have noticed that there are lots and lots of dots in this renal cortex. That is all of the capillaries. So the blood comes in through the renal artery and it gets pushed through arterioles into the capillaries, and these capillaries fill the outer portion, and it is then the nephron that attaches to these capillaries to allow for the removal of some of the blood in order to be sorted. And then you'll notice that it goes back up to the cortex again. Well, that's to chuck out all the stuff that we want to keep, right? So it's close to this blood supply. So the cortex itself is highly vascular, meaning it contains loads and loads of blood vessels to allow for the sorting and the delivery mechanisms of what we want to keep to go back into our body. Okay, keep that in mind for when we're going to talk now about the structure of the nephron. So this is a nephron. If I zoomed in really close into the head of the nephron, I'm going to see a blood supply that is going to come into the kidney. This blood supply is going to go into it, and that is the afferent arteriole. Afferent means towards the center. Okay, afferent means towards the center, and arteriole means a thin artery. Okay, so a big blood supply coming from an artery which has got high pressure and high oxygen. Then it gets into this curly whirly center. That curly whirly center is called the glomerulus. Okay, the glomerulus. And then the blood flow is going away, and that is going to be the efferent. Efferent meaning away from the center. So towards is the afferent, glomerulus is the center, and away is the efferent. Okay. And then we get this structure here, which is the Bowman's capsule. And this Bowman's capsule is the head of the nephron. And what's going to happen is, because there is such high pressure from this glomerulus being so curly-whirly and convoluted and squidged up together, it's going to increase the pressure that's going to squeeze out some of the blood product. And these are going to be, not all of it, only some of the blood product, and this is going to become filtrate. The filtrate is about 1/5 of the blood. It's not urine, it's not blood, it's filtrate. It's the part that we can sort out. Now, not everything can pass through into the Bowman's capsule. Large red blood cells, RBC, large red blood cells and large macromolecules and the like, they're not going to get through those teeny tiny little holes in order to get this filtrate through into the Bowman's capsule. So only the stuff that can pass through, like some water, some amino acids, a little bit of glucose, some of our ions, they're all going to go in there, but not all. So what's going to happen to the efferent is it's going to then join up into the capillaries that are then going to return and leave the kidneys and go back through circulating through the body. Now that filtrate is now going to continue going down the nephron. Ooh. Did you remember what term means close to the start? So I hope you realized that was the word afferent, right? Meaning towards the start, going towards the center. So this afferent here is this section, the afferent arteriole. This is the glomerulus, and this is the efferent arteriole going away from. This section right here is the part that we've just been talking about, which is the Bowman's capsule. And this was where we're going to take the filtrate, okay? Now, here is the wiggly first section of the tube. And the wiggly first section of the tube is called the convoluted proximal tubule. Let me explain these words. Convoluted means twisty-turny. Proximal means near the start. And tubule means thin tube. Pretty cool. Okay. Now, if you were to ask me, what is the most important part of this nephron? I would tell you it is this loop of Henle. This loop of Henle. Why is it so important? Well, it is because it is going to help regulate our water. Okay, how? This is the important part. Okay, so there are two sides to this loop of Henle. Going on the upside, that's this part, this side here. This is the ascending side, it's going up. And on the ascending side of the loop of Henle, it is going to pump out, meaning it's going to use ATP, that's our energy molecule, right? Adenosine triphosphate. It's going to use it for active transportation. It is going to pump out these salts. Now, if you remember where it was, we said that the nephron started in the cortex, in the part of the outermost part. It dipped down into the medulla near that renal pyramid, through the renal pyramid, and then go back up again. Well, that part there it means that the nephron starts in the cortex, goes into the medulla, and goes back to the cortex again. And this is the important part. You can see that I've got a dividing line here, right? I've got this dividing line. And this region here is going to be this region here is going to be the cortex, and the region below it is going to be the medulla. Okay, making sense so far, I hope at least. So what we see is that we're going to actively pump out salts from this ascending side, and we make this whole medulla region hypertonic, which means salty. That's all it means. It means salty, really salty. We've added these salts. Now, I don't mean table salt like NaCl that you put on your French fries. Salty, meaning that it's going to pump out these sodium, potassium, chlorine, so on and so forth salts that are going to go into this medulla and make it hypertonic, really, really salty. Now, what's the thing that you're going to do if you eat lots and lots of French fries that are salty? It's going to make you thirsty. Why? It's because there is an imbalance between the salts and the water, right? And you need more water. Well, that's the same kind of thing that's happening here in this region of the medulla. So what's going to happen is the medulla becomes hypertonic, really, really salty, because the ascending loop of Henle has pumped out these salts, and only, please note, only salts can come out of this ascending loop of Henle. So on the descending loop of Henle, only water to come out, no salts. So on this descending loop of Henle, right, this means it's coming down. Oh, that's a really bad arrow, but you get my point. It is going to allow passive, that means no energy used, passive flow of water is going to come out of this descending loop of Henle in order to equalize this saltiness. Okay, why? Because if we wanted to try and move water by itself, it actually costs a lot of energy. So it's more energy efficient to pump out these salts, make it really salty, and then the water will passively flow out. Okay, we're going to come back to this a little bit more in 1 second. I just want to finish giving you the diagram here of what we've got going on. So we've pumped out these salts on the ascending side, water's flowing out in the medulla, and we're still salting. What do we want to keep? What do we want to get rid of? Well, again, we've now got a wiggly, wiggly, wiggly bit, this wiggly, wiggly, wiggly bit. This is the distal convoluted tubule. So distal means further from the start or closer to the end. Convoluted, wiggly, wiggly, tubule, thin tube. Okay. And now we're going to get to this section right here. This is where we have the collecting ducts. And you can see that there are lots more collecting ducts that are joining to form one. And you'll notice that it goes back down through this medulla, which is going to become very important shortly. Okay, so now we've got lay of the land. This is what a nephron looks like. Let's talk more about this loop of Henle and how the water comes out. It comes out through osmosis. Now, osmosis, this my dear friends, is a key point. Please make sure you write this down. Please make sure, no, it's in this direction. Make sure that you got this in your notes because osmosis is very, 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 very important. Okay, osmosis is the movement of water molecules from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Now, did anybody else's brain go, well, how is that different than diffusion? Well, diffusion is any molecules, and there is no semi-permeable membrane. Osmosis is specifically going to be with water, and that there is a semi-permeable, or it's also known as a selectively permeable membrane. So let's look at this picture above my head. And what we can see here is, do you see how there's only one sugar molecule over here and that there are 4 over here? Can you see that? 2, 3, 4, right? Now, of these, the concentration of water to salt ratio or to sugar ratio is higher on this left-hand side. There is more water to sugar ratio than on this side here. There is less water to sugar because there is more sugar. And so the water molecules move in this direction from a high concentration to a low concentration through the selectively permeable membrane. Only water can pass, not sugar. Okay, so why is it high to low? It's due to the ratio of salt to water. So if there is more salt, less water, then it's a region of low concentration of water. And if there is high water, low salt, we're reaching a high water concentration, and it's going to flood across to dilute things out. So think back to what we just saw with our loop of Henle. The salts are coming out, so that medulla is really hypertonic, lots and lots of salts. So there is less water in the medulla than inside that loop of Henle. There are more salts out here that need neutralizing, that need diluting. So the water comes out of that descending loop of Henle in order to make everything more even. And that's how we conserve our water. Okay, this was a really important point, so I want to make sure you know this. So what were the 2 key main differences between osmosis and diffusion? Please make sure you know this. If you don't, go back and make sure you figured this one out. Okay, so do you remember when we were talking about this section right here as being the collecting ducts? Okay, this collecting duct was very important because there were lots of these other nephrons that were joining in together. And the other really important thing was, do you see how it goes back through into this hypertonic region? It makes it incredibly salty, okay? All right, so here is the part. So in the collecting duct, okay, in the collecting duct, we have, it has pores, okay? It has little pores. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Oh, it erased the whole thing. That's all right. We'll figure this out. All right, so in the collecting duct, there are going to be pores. These are holes, little openings, right, that are going to allow for the water to go back out and help to neutralize the saltiness of this medulla because it's going back through this hypertonic region. And so if there is a hormone produced, which is called your antidiuretic hormone, this is going to open up the pores, which means that more water is going to passively flow out into this hypertonic region, meaning it's going to help to extract more water from this urine to be able to help to reduce the amount of salt in the medulla. Okay, I called this urine, and it's correct to call it urine. In the beginning, this part here, it was filtrate. And not until it reaches the collecting duct do we actually say it's urine. This is when it contains all the waste. We don't have anything else that we want to keep. with the potential of a little extra water if our body requires it. So if it's a really hot day and we're really sweating and we're like, oh, look at that, we need to conserve more water, a hormone called the antidiuretic hormone is going to be released, and those pores are going to open up and the water is going to be conserved. Okay, so that means that less water is going to go to our bladder, more water stays in our body, and it concentrates up the urine. It makes it stronger, more potent, more concentrated, less water contains in it. Okay, so there's an anti-diuretic hormone that opens the pores. But you also have something called a diuretic. This is going to close the pores. So if the pores are closed, there's no holes that are open, then no water is going to be extracted out into the medulla, and more of it's going to travel down that collecting duct into your bladder, which is going to fill it up quicker, and it's going to make you need to pee more, right? So less water is conserved, more is going to be excreted from the body. So, have you ever noticed if you've drunk a cup of tea, hot or cold, you need to pee afterwards? Well, that's because tea contains a natural diuretic. So quite often if you're drinking a drink and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to pee, right? That's because of the diuretic in action. It's closed up those pores inside your collecting duct. More water is funneled, or more liquid is funneled down to your bladder. It fills it up quicker, and then it says, oh, you need to go toilet. Okay. There is something I do have to tell you about. Have you ever heard of a diuretic medication? Well, this diuretic medication can be prescribed under important circumstances, such as there is a disease called Meniere's disease, where you've got too much fluid inside your ear. If you've got too much fluid inside your ears, you can actually throw your balance off and it can cause you to get vertigo. But you could also have prescribed this diuretic if, for example, you have too much liquid water being stored in your body. Let's say you've had surgery and you're retaining too much water due to a surgical situation. Like my grandmother, when they removed some of her coronary blood vessels in her legs for her coronary artery bypass, they put her on a diuretic to help reduce the amount of water that was being retained in her legs. Okay, but I'm going to tell you where they actually put this, and it makes me really nervous. They put this in diet pills. Now, diet pills, you should run for the hills if anybody was like, oh, I've got a quick, easy way of losing weight. I'm going to take a diet pill. Tell them no. Tell them no. Tell them heckety heck, no. No. And there is a huge problem with this, because people will take a diet pill and they were like, oh, it works. I've lost 2 pounds. Hooray. No, you didn't lose the weight. This is not losing adipose tissue, fat. This just makes you pee more. It loses water weight. It also contains ephedrine and caffeine that should stimulate your body to make you feel even better, to cover up the effects of this, which is going to make you really sick. Because if you don't need a diuretic to make you pee more for those medical conditions and certain medical conditions, it could be to do with your blood pressure, it could be to do with kidney stones, it could be to do with Meniere's disease, it could be like there is medical reasons why you might be prescribed a diuretic. If you just take it because you want to lose weight, you're going to just lose water. And this is going to cause massive problems to your body, put huge strain on your kidneys, put strain on all of your bodily functions. As I said, heck no, heckety heck no, run for the hills, no. No. Do you get the point? It's really bad for you. So spelling matters. Okay, so I'm going to read these to you. Ready? Pour, and pour. Did you hear a difference? No, because they are homophones, right? They sound the same, but they mean totally different things. So it's really important that you know the difference in the spelling of these words. So for the first one, P-O-R-E, these are little holes. So you might have a pore in a sieve, or in your coffee filter, or in your skin, or in the collecting duct that allows for the water to be extracted, hence why I'm including this here. Or to pour over the data means to examine it closely, to look at all of it. The second one, P-O-U-R, is that you're going to pour some liquid, okay? For example, to tip it out. Or poor, P-O-O-R, that means impoverished, like you're lacking in funds, or that you're lacking in, maybe it's not good enough, inadequate in terms of you did poorly on an exam, hopefully not, or that you are in poor health, your health is not good enough, or doggy paws, right, their pads, their feet. So spelling matters. Okay, so we just said that the kidneys, the warehouse, inside are the nephrons. They generate and make up the urine that is going to travel down the ureters and go into the bladder. Why? Because we need a bladder as a storage site so that we don't continuously leak out urine. If that was just continuously going and that we didn't have a stop, we would have a big problem. Number one, we might slip on it. Number two, we would have this wetness on our skin. And if you remember back to going licking, blowing, it would get very cold. So you would get hypothermia. You would get very cold very quickly if you were constantly wet. Do you remember we talked about impetigo with the spotty botty, where you have infection due to rawness of the skin, and then it gets, and that children that wore diapers particularly that were very full of urine irritating their skin would be more likely to get this disease. So it would cause inflammation to the skin, very bad stuff. But the big one is that you would get really easily dehydrated. So there are no stops between the production of urine until it gets to the bladder. At the bottom of the bladder, there is a band of muscles called a sphincter that is going to close off and hold that bladder closed so that it can fill up with urine. Now inside there are rugae, these are wrinkles and folds, and they will allow to expand to be able to fill up to about 2 cups worth of urine, right? And so this allows for it to expand. Now this muscle around the outside of it is also going to allow for, again, to hold the urine in place, and then it squeezes when that bottom sphincter muscle opens up and the urine's going to come out. Really quite clever. But the point of having this is that this is the only place where we are going to store this waste product. Well, why are we storing it? It's waste. We need to excrete it. Well, it also allows us to extract more water. So if all of a sudden you're now outside, you are running around, sweating, you're exercising in the hot, hot summer sun, you're sweating buckets, your body's like, whoa, Nelly, I'm losing lots and lots of water here. I need to conserve it. So again, those collecting ducts are going to open up those pores really wide. The antidiuretic hormone's going to suck out as much water as possible up the top by the kidneys, but now in the bladder we're going to extract some more water in order to make sure that our level of water inside our body is maintained, homeostasis, right? So we're going to maintain our own body water levels. Really important stuff. Now, there are some cases, this is really cool, really, really clever. There are some cases that we're now taking stem cells and we're growing them on a scaffolding and then implanting those grown organs into the body. What? They did this first with the trachea, and now the second organ that they did was a bladder. Why? Because the bladder is not very many complicated cell structures and tissues. It's mainly just a couple, right? Muscles and stretchy and connective tissues, right? A little bit of nerves. But they were able to grow a complete bladder in a lab and then transplant it into somebody who needed it. Whoa! The advances they're doing with science is amazing. Amazing. Just unreal. I just am astounded by it, aren't you? Now, you might have thought that you, in terms of going to the toilet, urinating, passing urine, draining your bladder, and there's all sorts of other terms for this, right? Is called to urinate. They can't make it easy, can they? Nope. The act of urinating is actually called micturating. Really? Micturation. To micturate. This is to release urine from your bladder. And what does that? It's your brain. So that bladder fills up with urine. It sends a signal to that sphincter, that band of muscles saying, hey, we're getting full in here and there's some pressure. And that sends a signal to your brain that says, yep, we need to go to the toilet. And then your brain is going to send a signal back down to those muscles to release, relax, and contract. So release and relax that sphincter at the bottom, right here, this sphincter. This is the spelling of the word sphincter. And it releases and opens to, and then the muscle, these detrusor muscles, are going to squeeze, and it's going to push the urine out and allow you to urinate, or, I beg your pardon, micturate. So as you micturate, right, your bladder is going to empty, and then when it gets emptied, your brain's like, okay, that's enough, and it closes off that sphincter to allow you to then refill that bladder up again. Pretty cool. Now, this process of controlling that sphincter is a learnt behavior. So babies, they don't have that behavior learnt and down pat yet. They do that pee-pee dance as they're getting like a toddler stage, like, oh, I think I need to go toilet. And then they go to the toilet and we're like, yay. Okay, potty training. So much fun. So this is a learnt behavior. And we're going to talk later about when and if that can actually go wrong and you can lose the ability to control your bladder. Ooh. To be continued. Question time. Okay, can you please spell the correct version of the word that means a small hole or to examine well? I'll give you a hint. It's poor. Okay, here we go. I think you need a brain break, which may involve a pee break, because quite oftentimes when we discuss the urinary system, you're going to have an increased need to pee, and that's okay. So get up, go stretch, go have a pee break, empty your bladder. You're going to find out that it's really important not to hold your urine, okay? Don't hold your urine. It's very important to go pee. So get up, go pee right now, and then make sure you wash your hands and come back. Just like with many other systems, there are lots of things that can go wrong. I'm going to select just a couple to talk about. Just remember, though, that there are far more than I've just listed here that can go wrong as ailments within the urinary system. So we're going to talk about cystitis, which is kind of like a common term for urinary tract infections. And we'll talk about honeymoon cystitis, kidney stones, you don't want those. And then we'll finish up with talking about incontinence. Urinary tract infections. These are going to be something that you would need to know about because they're awful. Nobody wants one, and unfortunately, they're really quite common. This is where you have a generalized term, a UTI, urinary tract infection, that basically means that you have got a nasty infection, typically E. coli, typically a bacterial infection, that has gone and got up into your urethra. Now you're going to have pain in your lower pelvic region. You're going to have tenderness in your bladder region, right, where your pelvis is. You're going to have an increased risk, need to urinate because your body is trying to flush out this bacteria, and you might get blood in your urine, hematuria, right? You might get a little bit of blood in there. Now, they could be in your urethra, so urethritis, itis meaning inflammation of usually due to an infection, but here we go. Or cystitis. Remember, cyst, the prefix meaning bladder. This is going to be the most common type of urinary tract infection. Or when it goes into your kidneys, that's really bad. You don't want that to happen. So how do you make sure it doesn't get up there? Well, the first is to understand what the signs and symptoms are of a urinary tract infection. So if you constantly need to go pee, that's your body telling you, let's flush out this bacteria that's in there. But if you're there and it's like, ooh, it smarts when and you got a little burning when you go tinkle, right? Micturate. That might be indicative that there could be something going on, that your urine smells weird color, that it might be a little bit cloudy, or that you might see blood in there. These are all indicative that there could be a urinary tract infection going on. So when in doubt, get it checked out. So it's probably one of the top 5 most common infections is a urinary tract infection. 8 million doctors in the US, 8 million doctor visits. So people go about 8 million times every year in the US. Kind of crazy. Far more common in women than in men. And there is a couple of reasons for that. Number 1 is anatomy. Remember the length of the urethra. In a man, it is significantly longer than a woman. And so the distance between the body, where a lot of this bacteria is lying, and also the location of the anus and the vagina, right? Obviously, a man doesn't have a vagina. But all of that, the bacteria, is closer to get up into a female's anatomy, and it's shorter, and so therefore more likely for it to get up in there. And eat its way into the wall. Now, realize that this is going to be painful and unpleasant because this bacteria is not going to be like, oh, let's go into this urethra and sit here. It's going to bury into the walls and it's going to eat into the walls of this urethra, which is why it's going to cause inflammation and pain and maybe even bleeding. But it doesn't stay there because it's going to crawl up that urethra and go into the bladder. Now it becomes even more difficult to treat because that bladder has a greater surface area, and so now it sits in there and it is going to become more prolific and it's going to be harder to treat. But it doesn't just stay there. It's going to crawl up those ureters and get into the kidneys if it is not treated. Now, I don't know why anybody wouldn't treat it because it's going to hurt and it's going to be very unpleasant. But if this is incredibly aggressive, you don't have treatment, blah, 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 it could go into your kidneys. And this is going to lead to probably hospitalization with IV antibiotics and pain meds because it is that painful and dangerous. Yeah, people lose kidneys from untreated urinary tract infections. So it's really important to treat it. But it's also really important to see where you could prevent it. So women are more likely to get it than men because of our anatomical situations, but also wiping. So why is it important? Always wipe front to back, never back to front. That is because if you're wiping back to front, you're likely to drag the bacteria from the anus and vagina into the urethra and cause an infection. Lifestyle also. Bubble baths. Would you believe it? Right? Women are more likely to have bubble baths, but sitting in a bubble bath, right? You're sitting there, all of your bacteria from your body goes into the water and they're swimming around and they're like, woohoo, look at that. There's a urethra. It's a nice, dark, damp area. I'll go and live in here. And then, whoop, you got a urinary tract infection. There are some women that just looking at a bubble bath, they're going to get a urinary tract infection. I exaggerate, not just by looking at it, but you can get my point, right? They're very, very prone to it. There is one more that I wanted to point out. Have you ever heard of honeymoon cystitis? This is from sexual relations, like most people hopefully abstinence until marriage, and then engage in sexual relations, and that transference of bacteria from one to another plus friction is going to increase the likelihood of you getting a urinary tract infection. Ouch. Okay, so if you have a urinary tract infection, remember that is going to cause pain. It's going to cause pain when you urinate. It's going to cause these bacteria to travel upwards and eat away and cause inflammation, increase urination, increase all sorts of problems, right? But it can, as I said, travel up to the kidneys. One of the telltale signs of that is going to be pain in the lower back region and pain in the pelvic region from the bladder being infected, right? But the back pain, if you've got back pain, that's going to be because it's now got into the kidneys. So cystitis is in the bladder, most common, but it can travel if left untreated. Did you realize that your job can actually influence you having the increased risk of a UTI? Yeah. Do you know who's most likely to get a UTI? Teachers. Why? Because we can't go to the toilet whenever we want to. Now, this is more the case with younger children. So could you imagine leaving a class of 20 kindergarteners so you could go to the toilet? That's just not doable, right? You come back and little Johnny's cut off Susie's hair and Timmy's gone and stuck his finger in the electrical socket and Matthew's glued his hand to the wall, right? Not going to happen. So most of the time, teachers are going to have to hold their urine. It's quite a commonplace discussion as, oh, didn't pee today. No, me neither, right? Because you just can't. You're so busy and you can't leave the kids unattended. So teachers are actually one of the most likely group of people based upon their profession to get a UTI. Other people like women delivery people, men have it a little bit easier because they can pee elsewhere or in a bottle, but women not so much, right? So your profession can actually influence your urinary health. So it's really important that if you can get up and walk around and go pee. So don't ever hold it in. If you get the urge to go tinkle, because if not, it could lead to a UTI. So again, big things about UTIs is to prevent them. Don't let them happen in the first place. So make sure that your underwear is cotton and breathable. Don't sit in wet underwear. What else? If you're going to have a bubble bath or a bath, wash beforehand so you've washed off this bacteria. Have your bath and then afterwards wash again to make sure. That seems like a lot of washing, right? But it makes sure that you're not going to get bacteria get up into your bits. Again, lots of reasons why you might get it. Big one, wiping. Just make sure you wipe front to back, never back to front. Now, if you do get signs and symptoms of a urinary tract infection, you've got pain, increased frequency, there could be an odor, cloudiness, you feel malaise, a general feeling of unwellness, right? Call the doctor. If the doctor is not available for whatever reason, maybe you're on holiday in a remote place, see if there is ability of getting cranberry juice. Do not get the cranberry juice with the added sugar. That is not going to help you in any way, shape or form. Cranberry juice, that is just plain natural cranberries. They actually have cranberry extract you can get in pill form if you are susceptible to UTIs. Why cranberry juice? Because it changes the pH of your urethra and it makes it less hospitable to these bacteria. Second, drink lots and lots of water. Why? Because you want to flush out that bacteria. Don't have caffeine, don't have alcohol, especially, when you're of age, and then definitely not now. Spicy food, citrus, that can all influence your urinary health and cause more issues. So a doctor would be a very important thing. They're going to take your urine, they'll give it, you pee in a cup, and they're going to send it off to the lab to make sure that they can grow and culture that bacteria that's in your urine. And they're going to have prescribed you a medication, an antibiotic, that will hopefully get rid of this bacteria that's causing you all of these problems. The growth in the lab is going to check to make sure that they've prescribed the right antibiotic for you. And if not, they'll call you in a new antibiotic. And they're going to tap on your back to make sure it's not got into your kidneys. And sometimes they're also going to give you some other medication that will help to ease the symptoms. But big thing, drink water, lots of water always, stay hydrated, and at the first sign of it, Okay, speaking of first sign, If all of a sudden you're like, oh, that smarts, okay, don't be like, oh, I've had one tinkle that's really a little bit, and I'm going to call the doctor. Okay, give it a couple of tinkles because it might have been irritated. This is particularly for females that, let's say that you have gone for a long bike ride or a horseback riding or sexual relations. This could cause irritation in that area and therefore could actually make you feel like you've got a UTI when you don't, and rather it's just irritated. But when in doubt, you can always call the doctor and get it checked out. Okay? Okay. Oh, see if you remember what term means to release urine. Micturition. I hope you got that. Okay, let's keep talking. Let's talk about our kidney stones. They're also called renal calculi or nephrolithiasis. Ooh, they all sound horrible, don't they? In fact, these are a couple of pictures of the different types of kidney stones. They can be made out of different things. Most common formed out of a calcium oxalate combination, and it could also be due to increased sodium. But look at the shape of them. They're not like nice and smooth. They're jagged, nasty little things. Now, what is the likelihood of you getting it? Well, genetics plays a large part in this, but also not drinking enough water. Your diet, if it's high in things like sodium and processed food, that can also cause issues. And please hear me, a kidney stone can happen at any age. This is not an old man disease. This is not a female thing. This is anyone can get them at any age. Now, if you've got a family member that has made kidney stones, you are more likely to make kidney stones yourself. Therefore, you must be more diligent and more focused on making sure you have enough water, your diet is healthy, and that you watch out for the telltale signs of it. All right. It's story time. I'm going to tell you about my wonderful husband. When my daughter was about a year or so old, my husband and I, we worked opposite shifts. So he worked during the day and then I worked retail at night. So we didn't have to put Ella into daycare. So he came home and he was about to take Ella from me and he grabbed her and was like, oh, take the baby out my back. I was like, oh no, what's happened? He was like, oh, I must have pulled my back. I'm like, oh, you poor thing. So the next day, he goes to pick her out of the crib and couldn't lift her up. I was like, oh, that's a problem. So this went on for a couple of days. Now, I really don't know how single mothers do it. I take my hat off to any single parent. But I was a single parent for a few days and I was at my wit's end because my husband could do nothing to help because he could not lift our daughter. And our daughter was not big. It was about a year old, right? I was like, not doing this. You're in pain. This doesn't seem like it's your lower back and pulled back. It's time to go to the doctors. So we went to the doctors and they did an ultrasound. And lo and behold, he said, guess what? You have a kidney stone. Now, there are 3 options that you can have when you have a kidney stone. The first option is we're going to wait for you to pee it out. Now, this is going to be an unpleasant thing and you're going to pee out this stone. Now, this stone, obviously, this is an exaggeration, but you're going to pee out a big stone. And hopefully it's going to pass through. We'll put you on a diuretic. Oh, yes. Do you remember that word? Diuretic. It is going to increase your urination by closing off those pores in the collecting duct so that you'll have more liquid go to your bladder. And hopefully we're going to flush out this kidney stone. There is another option where we can pass ultrasound and it breaks up the stone. And instead of being this large stone, you're now peeing out shrapnel. Sounds fun, right? At least it passes, but it's going to be shards. Ouch. But because where my husband's kidney stone was, they could not do this ultrasound bombardment. It would have caused damage to the kidneys. So that wasn't option number 3. And the third option was, well, surgery, but to go and get and remove it. But, we're going to try the first option first. So they told my husband to go to the dollar store and go and buy a strainer, a colander, something looked like this. Why? Because he needed to pee through it. So for the next week, being on the diuretic, he was peeing through this strainer in case he peed out the stone so that they could collect it, or he could collect it in the strainer, take it in so they could analyze it. But a week went by, he still didn't pass the stone, and it was just not there. So we had to go for option number 3, whereby he had to go and get surgery to remove it. So they went up his urethra with a tube, through the bladder, through the ureters to find the stone. And passing through a little camera, you looking in, find the stone, they can crush it up and then suck it out. And then he peed blood for about 3 days straight. Yes, the stone was out, but he was still in a lot of pain, and it took a few days for him to get better. A week later, we go back to the doctor's, and I go with him because I'm being the supportive wife. And we go into the office, and he sits there, and he goes in, and his face is like, what is that? I was like, no, honey, no. He's into fly fishing. There's obviously a fly fishing rod. It wasn't. I knew jolly well it wasn't, but I was trying to keep him happy. So the doctor comes in and he says, guess what? We took your stone that we removed from you and we analysed it. And it is a high sodium based stone. So let's look at your diet. What do you eat for breakfast? Oh, I don't have breakfast. I have a Diet Coke. Oh. And what do you have for lunch? Oh, well, in between is a snack. I probably will have some pretzels, some salty pretzels, or maybe I'll have some M&Ms or some Snickers bar, and I have some iced tea or another Diet Coke. And then for lunch, I'll have, well, if I go home, I'll have a can of soup, and I will have some chicken nuggets, or I might make myself some ramen noodles with soy sauce, and then if I don't and I don't have time to go home, I'll have McDonald's and I'll have some chicken nuggets there and a burger and fries. And then for dinner, well, she cooks dinner and I did cook dinner and it was nice and healthy. Thank you very much. And he was like, well, everything you've listed so far apart from her dinner is high sodium, so soda needs to go. Iced tea is usually going to contain a high amount of sodium. All of these processed foods, high sodium. Ramen noodles, high sodium. If you actually look on a can of soup, number one, it's actually serving size of a can of soup for 2 people, and the amount of sodium in a can of soup is almost your daily allowance. What? Amazing. So he goes through and he starts to try and curtail his diet, and he says, okay, the best thing you can do, get rid of all processed foods, and now start drinking lots of water and put some lemon in it, because the lemon is going to help to react with the stones and prevent them from forming. And so he's like, okay, I could do that. And just when he thinks he's done and can leave, the doctor turns around and said, so the location of where your stone was damaging to your kidneys, so we had to put in a stent, and they can't be there permanently, and we need to remove it. So the stent helps to hold open where the damaged part was and allowed the ureter to heal. And he was like, okay, so when do we schedule it for? And he said, oh no, now, drop your trousers. And my husband was like, wait, what? So they took that fly fishing rod, which was a cystoscope, and they put it up his urethra, through his bladder, and up his ureter to find the stent. Now, there is no anesthetic. There is no local. There is no Valium to knock you out. There is nothing except for a cough. Why do you cough? Because you bear down and he opens up that sphincter at the bottom of the bladder to allow this to go through. Now, I'm not going to exaggerate, but I'm going to tell you that the beginning of the scope was probably the width of my pinky finger, and it just got wider until the very end of it was quite a large camera that the doctor was looking through. And he's looking for this, and he couldn't find the stent. So he grabbed it and he said, well, we can't find it. I'm going to have another look. And he rotated the whole scope while it was still inside my husband. Now, you know the phrase screamed like a little girl. I have never heard my husband make this sound, nor do I want to hear him make this sound again, but there was definitely a screamage, and he was not a happy man. So they found the stent, and they removed it like starting a lawnmower, boom, and he beat blood for another 3 days. Ouch. But now he's better. Hooray! To be continued. So question, what part of the body have we already discussed the use of a stent in? Ooh, see if you can come up with that. Okay, so he's changed his diet. He's drinking lots of water. He's cutting out his sodium. He's trying to make sure that his high oxalate foods like spinach and the like are only consumed very minimally. He's cut out all of this fast food junk. Soda, gone away. Now, if you remember way back in the beginning of the course when we were talking about the 11 systems, I had this little caution around the Gatorade, and this is the reason why. Remember that your kidneys are doing the filtering. It's sorting out all the stuff that you want and all the stuff that you don't want. If you keep bombarding it with the stuff that you don't want, the extra, like the salts, it's going to start to potentially build into a stone. So if you are drinking Gatorade, which is high sugar and high electrolytes, this increases your risk of getting kidney stones. Now, I have a rule whereby, and I think it's part of the advertisement, if you're not sweating, you're not drinking Gatorade. So yes, I do provide my family Gatorade only when they're like running a marathon or having a big game, active, really sweating, really needing it to replace, or diarrhea and vomiting because you're losing your electrolytes. Other than that, nope. Water is key. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're looking out for yourself and making sure that you're not going to get these kidney stones because they are painful. Some people say that it is like giving birth. It is that much pain. Ouch. Now, a few years later, my husband and daughter have the same birthday. So my husband for many years did not have a birthday because it was overtaken by my daughter. He's had princess birthday parties and, I don't know, unicorn parties. But this one time he was out taking the girls out on a boat with tubing. And he comes back and he says, don't be worried, but I'm going to take myself off to the hospital. I'm passing a kidney stone. I was like, wait, what? My pool was full of girls, teenage girls, and now my husband is taking himself off to the hospital. So I get a sister to come and look after the girls, and I run up to see my husband, and he sat there grinning like a Cheshire cat because he's got an IV with pain medicine in, because yes, lo and behold, he was passing another kidney stone. Now, these kidney stones, when they pass down your ureter, you have a strong collection of nerves around your ureter. So as it's passing down, this collection of nerves get really irritated. And so once it got into the bladder, he was feeling much better. Okay, well, he's still drinking lots of water with lemon, but noticing here that there was some soup in the cupboard. And there was some ramen noodles, and that there was some sodas drunk every once in a while, and there was some chicken nuggets. Ruh-roh. Yeah. Now, he didn't just have one kidney stone. He had 7 in both his kidneys. He had some in each. I'm like, oh. Now, he passed one of them. Okay, fine. He's on medication to help to remove some of these and make them smaller. He's on diuretics to increase the amount that he pees to help try and flush them out. But one of the big problems is that with his kidney stones being where they are, they're causing him to have increased and high blood pressure. Now let's think about this. Why? Because remember the filtration of our kidneys, it has to be at a steady level. If our kidneys are being blocked by a kidney stone and it is preventing this filtration happening, we constrict our blood vessels to increase the pressure, to push it through, to allow for filtration to occur at a steady rate. But overall, it is going to cause this high blood pressure throughout the body. Well, that can cause issues with all sorts of other problems. So he's on medication as well as this lemon water to help flush out these. A little while ago, he did get one and it did pass through, but it lodged in his bladder. And no matter how much he was drinking this water, he was getting stuck in his bladder and he couldn't pee it out. So yeah, they went back up and they went and got it and crushed it and poured it out, and he peed blood for another 3 days. Now, here's an extra fun part. What they're now doing is they're wanting to make sure that they got all of the stone, and you have to filter your own blood pee into containers, and if you see any shards of this stone remnant, you have to sort it out and collect it. Well, after this surgery, you don't feel very well, and so you make sure you have a loving spouse that is willing to sort through your pee blood to find those stones. Yay! It's all right. We do these things. It's all good. So drinking lemon water, let's have a little word to the wise. Yes, it can help to break down the stones, but it also is going to break down your teeth enamel. So if you are drinking lots of lemon water, make sure that you're rinsing your mouth afterwards with just regular water or cleaning your teeth well, because that lemon the acid can break away at your enamel and cause issues. So hopefully you realize that this whole thing about kidney stones is an unpleasant thing, and you do not want to get a kidney stone. So if you want to prevent this from happening, number one, make sure you know your family history. If you've got a close relative that's got kidney stones, be on the lookout and make sure you're even more cognizant of, this is lurking in my background. So my children know that they've got this lurking in their background, that they need to make sure that they drink plenty of water, they eat really healthily, all of this processed junk, high sodium, nope. Fast food, sodas, really bad for you, right? And to exercise. Water is your friend. I can't stress this enough. Water is your friend. So how much water? I'm often asked, well, how much water should I drink? Well, the answer is as long as you're not thirsty and that your urine is nice and clear. So you can actually tell a lot of your health by your urine. So if you're looking at your urine and it's really dark or brown or really dark orange, that's not a good thing. You do not want that. You want your urine to be clear to light straw yellow. And if it is, awesome, you're very well hydrated and everything's going great. If it's not, increase your water, okay? Increase your water. You never want to be thirsty, because that means that you've got first signs of dehydration. Next, and penultimate. Oh, I like that word. Penultimate means the one before the last. It's one of my favorite words as well. Ooh, penultimate. The penultimate ailment of this urinary system. We're going to talk about incontinence. Now, this actually happens a lot more often than you would think. This is where you can no longer control that sphincter at the bottom of your bladder and it becomes leaky. A lot of women will have incontinence, more so than men, and a lot of times it's due to pregnancy, okay? So if you've been pregnant, you can see with this that the baby's head and weight is pushing down on that bladder, and that actually causes a weakness in the pelvic floor of that muscles that are going to keep the bladder closed, so that if you run, sneeze, jump, cough, you might have a little dribble of urine that comes out. A way to prevent this from happening is by doing Kegel exercises. This helps to strengthen your pelvic floor. As I said, this is actually really quite a prevalent condition that a lot of people will suffer from, even if it's temporary, or it could be a permanent thing. Like if you've had a brain injury, or as you get older, so geriatrics, old people, they can suffer from this as well. So this reverts back to your brain not being able to control that sphincter. So there are solutions. One solution is prevention, is building up that pelvic floor to make sure that that muscle helps to close off that sphincter to prevent leakage. Or you might have, depends, these are adult diapers that can help to collect any leaks. Or if you have severe incontinence whereby you cannot control your urine at all, you might end up having a catheter, a Foley catheter. This is whereby you get a tube that is going to get pushed up the urethra, and then there is a little bladder that inflates, a little balloon that inflates inside the bladder that prevents the urine from coming out of the urethra where you usually pee out of, and instead the urine goes through the Foley catheter and it collects either in a bag, maybe strapped to your leg or on the side of a hospital bed. So if you've had surgery, or if you're having an epidural because you're pregnant and going into labor, you might get, or it's quite likely that you'll get this catheter so that it collects your urine for you, particularly if you've had a very long surgery, or as I said, with an epidural where you can't feel anything from below the waist, or from the waist down, because that's what an epidural does, and you can't feel your legs to get up to go pee. Okay. Question. What are 2 signs of dehydration? Ooh. So hopefully you saw that the 2 signs were dark colored urine and being thirsty. Not good. Drink more water. Another thing that we are going to talk about is the worst case scenario is kidney failure. Now, the likelihood of having kidney failure is increased by diet and lifestyle. Diabetes and high blood pressure are the number 1 and number 2 causes of your kidneys failing. Diabetes, mainly caused by poor diet, right? Pancreas giving out, high sugar, very bad, right? And high blood pressure, again, could be caused because of poor diet and lifestyle and stress, and not so good. So as a temporary fix, if your kidneys are like, I give up, I don't want to work anymore, right? You could get something called dialysis or hemodialysis, where they're going to take your blood out, they run it through a machine, and they pump it back in. This takes 3 to 5 hours per session, which you need to do 3 times a week. And it's only a temporary measure. Now, if your kidneys don't come back online and they don't start working for you, you're going to need another option, which is whereby you might need a kidney transplant. Okay. Now, most of the time, people are on the transplant wait list. So they're waiting for a kidney for 3.5 years. And in that time, you're doing this dialysis and you're getting sicker and sicker and sicker. If you have the ability to get a kidney from a live donor, that would be somebody that matches your blood type and your antigens, and probably usually a family member or a close relative, then you can get that and you don't have to wait anymore, because they're going to give you their kidney, right? A living donor. But if you don't have anybody that is a living donor, then you have to wait for somebody to be deceased, and they have to die in a very special way, still hooked up to all the machines to keep their kidneys perfused with blood and oxygen, before they can be transplanted into you. And it can take years. And then the viability of them afterwards is less than a living donor. So, but here's the deal. You don't want to be in this state. So take care of your body. Drink water, healthy diet, healthy exercise, right? Okay. If you do have a living donor, right, they're going to make a very small incision. They can do it laparoscopic with keyhole surgery to remove the kidney, which is really pretty cool. And then they're going to put the extra kidney in place in the pelvic region of the recipient. And it's pretty amazing. They just add it in. and they put it in there so they can connect it to the blood vessels, the iliac coming off for the descending aorta branches to the iliac that goes down to your legs. They put the blood supply there, and then they connect the ureter, which they cut out of the living donor, and they connect it to the bladder, and then your kidney functions. Oh, amazing. And then you can get off dialysis and you can live a perfectly normal life. You just can't do any contact sports, nor can you take Advil, which will cause problems with your kidneys. All right, last question today. What does a cup of tea contain that makes you need to pee more often? And that was a diuretic. Okay, here we go. Last bit. Next up, you are going to hopefully drink lots and lots of water, because water is your friend. Make sure you pee often, because again, you don't want to hold your pee in. And then the extra work that you're going to do for me is you're going to build a nephron out of clay. You're going to build your urinary system again out of clay, and then watch the kidney dissection video that I created for you. And again, take good deep breaths. Make sure you take care of yourself, drink lots of water, and be a happy individual. Deep breathing. Hooray, we made it. And if you made it this far, high five. Well done. Boop. I'm so proud of you. You got this.